from our area tonight. So thank you all for coming out to support young, rising talent. We wanted to have our tickets free tonight for donations so the program is accessible. You know, a lot of you are families who have invested a lot in supporting these young musicians. But if you are in a position to make donations tonight, or you did with your tickets when you reserved them, it will support our youth programming at Chandler, which includes the launching of a new program, after-school violin program and chorus, and our summer youth musical, which this year is Oliver. So I want to give a thank you to some of our sponsors, particularly our sponsors that support our youth programming. Frankenberg Agency, National Life, Mascoma Bank, Bar Harbor Bank, Children's Trust, and the Dorothy Byrne Foundation. So thank you to all our sponsors. And we wouldn't all be here tonight if it weren't for one person. Janet Watton is a former board chair at Chandler, and she has, think of her as like the classical queen. She's still very engaged in supporting anything classical at Chandler, and she helps organize tonight, contacting teachers and getting students here. On top of that, baked a bunch of cookies for the reception afterwards. So please give a warm welcome to Janet Watson.
So, before we get started, turn off any noisemakers, and I want to invite you to a reception next door after the concert. A lot of you probably know that this all happened because in 2007, to celebrate our centennial, we invited the famous popular radio show From the Top to come here and perform, and it was lovely. But they had someone from Chicago, someone from Cleveland, somebody from Pittsburgh, from Boston. There are only 2 kids from our area. We thought, hey, we can do this ourselves. So we've been doing it ever since. One thing that we do differently, Christopher O'Reilly interviewed these kids, either before or after, and I thought, well, we're not going to do that. These kids are jittery enough without having to stand here and talk to me about it. So instead, we send them a form, a 2-part form. The top part is their musical life, which is written in your programs. And the bottom part is about their non-musical life. Are they goat farmers? Are they champion chess players? Are they hot balloon runners? And it shows you how well-rounded these kids are. So what I'm going to do is, before they come out, I'm going to read you what they told us about their non-musical life. However, I'm making 2 exceptions here right now. The first performance is 2 flutists, and each one of these ladies is going to come out on their own later, so I will read their thing then. And on top of all that, there's someone who is appearing on the stage 4 times, and that is our accompanist, Michael Sitton, and so he gets his own little bio read to you right now. Pianist Michael Sitton has taught students across a wide range of ages and levels of advancement throughout his career. He holds the Doctor of Musical Arts degree in piano performance and literature from the University of Illinois, with prior degrees in piano additional study in France under Gabi Casadasou, reflecting his lifelong interest in French music. His academic career included teaching and administrative work at 4 universities. He retired from his post as Dean of the Crane School of Music at SUNY Potsdam prior to a move to Vermont in recent years. Alongside broad performance interests in solo and chamber music, he has long engaged deeply with piano pedagogy, concern for each student's learning style, committed to the development of musicality in playing, and believing that a central focus of a teacher's role is to empower students to learn with increasing independence as they apply practice skills, reading fluency, and technical facility to explore a wide variety of musical skills and repertoire. Without further ado, then, I introduce now flutist Alice Green and Anna Dowerly she has to say. Aside from playing the piano, I have lots of other art-related hobbies, such as crochet, painting, and drawing. I've been dancing since I was 3 years old, and I love experimenting with the different dance styles that my studio has to offer. Currently, I take hip-hop, ballet, and modern classes, while also being in an audition-based company for high school students called Teen Jazz. I also teach a tap class for 6 to 8 years old, and this is my second year doing so. In school, I would say that my favorite subject is math, as there are many ways in which it is intertwined with everyday life. I love getting outside and going for hikes, bike rides, or reading. Lastly, I appreciate all the performance opportunities I've been given and getting to share my work with others, and so now she will share her work with you. That's it. Anna Darwin again. So I'll read about her this time. When she's not at school, she loves to play tennis. She plays varsity girls tennis for my school, Central Valley Union, and plays on the Edge Club junior tennis team in the summer. Other sports she enjoys include Nordic skiing, running, climbing, and swimming. She's part of various clubs and committees, is a member of Temple Sinai Social Action Committee, the CVO Math League, and CVO Farm to School. She's a junior now, but looks forward to attending college. So please welcome Anna. Next, we have cellist Luke Murphy. I am a runner and a Nordic skier. I've been on my high school's cross-country running and Nordic skiing teams all 4 years of high school, and the track team 3 years. I really like distance running. So last year, I ran the Vermont City Marathon. I love hiking mountains and being outdoors. I also like school, especially the subjects science and math. I am attending Middlebury College next year and I plan to keep playing the cello there. So please welcome Luke Murphy. Next we have Jessie Bodette. Besides music, I enjoy hiking, running, skiing, I love skiers, playing ultimate frisbee. When I have the time, I enjoy to color, paint, read, and currently I've been learning how to embroider. At school, some of my favorite subjects besides my music classes include environmental science and global politics. I have 4 dogs that I enjoy hanging out with, and in my free time, I love being outdoors, making coffee, and listening to music. Next year, I will be attending Scripps College in Claremont, California, with an intended major of environmental science and a minor in music. But that might change. I plan on continuing to play in an orchestra in college. So please welcome Jessie. way of buying young. Outside of piano, I live a pretty active life. I run and ski for the U32 teams, which means I spend a lot of time outside training, racing, or just spending time with my friends. I also love biking, especially mountain biking. I'm part of the Central Vermont Trailblazers, a mountain bike team where I get to train with other riders and compete in races. Whether it's flying down single track or grinding up steep climbs, I love the challenge and excitement, challenging and fun. Not too long ago, my brother Cody went on a Spanish trip to Peru for school. And if I stick with Spanish, that's something that I can also do in the future. I'm also part of the U32 Strings Orchestra, where I get to explore music in a different way while playing with other students and learning new pieces together. At home, I have a dog named Gus. He's small, fluffy, and basically a living teddy bear. I love petting him. He's the best buddy to relax with after a full day of school. Please welcome Ryan. I am a 3-season athlete, cross-country, running, Nordic skiing and track and field. I love to read. I have had 7 pet rats in total, and I love math and science, especially physics. Please welcome back Alice. last but certainly not least, we have Agastya Chakrabarti. Outside of violin, I play quiz bowl, where I just competed in the middle school national championship in Chicago. I also compete in math tournaments, having ranked first in New Hampshire numerous times. I enjoy playing soccer, where I've transitioned from goalie to winger, so I can keep my fingers safe. After all, I have to keep playing the violin. I've been learning Taekwondo for 6 years, and I'm getting close to my goal of earning a black belt. Please welcome Agastya.
But